Check, check. You guys should be able to hear me at this point. How's everyone today? I know you guys can answer me by mic, but there is a question section that I will be keeping my eyes on. So please feel free to use that. Is there a way to make that separate? No, there isn't. So we'll give our other participants a bit of time to join. We do have quite a bit of inscriptions today. Already a couple of us in here. This should be on the right screen here. Yeah, perfect. Good stuff. Good stuff. Give him another 2 to 3 minutes here. Be a nice guy. Give him up until 05. And then we'll get this ball rolling. Perfect. Beautiful. I have a pop-up view for these questions, so no questions will go unanswered. Keep in mind that there is that question section. Yeah, it's definitely part of the plan. We've got, we're going to go over most of the tabs here. So we have accessible reports in the employee profiles and the schedule tab and the timesheets and in the leave request tab as well. So absolutely, we'll go over that. Jules, I think, is the one who asked that question. Yeah, no problem. This session is recorded, so we might as well get it going. Just in case we run over time, whoever's not there will be able to tune in on the parts they missed. So welcome all. This is going to be a webinar on all types of reports that can be found, exported, imported in Evolia. Of course, there are different things that you might not need a report for because we've made the user experience and the kind of interface a little bit more easy straight in the application. So we'll go over different options on that topic, mainly thinking myself of the employee files if you want to update like their time bank values, their positions and stuff like that. We have all the possibilities to export and import, but we've made it a very easy and convenient tool to use directly in the platform. So we'll show you both options there. 12 of 251 max, so hopefully we get to 251 one day. But yeah, we'll get going. So to start us all off, reporting, a very, very useful tool. Of course, it's nice to have all the details in the web interface and the mobile interface, getting all the different notifications sent to you and the different kind of trackability that we have and offer on the platform. But it's nice to be able to export these reports and manipulate outside of this platform, make your own different filters if you need. If you just need to export and import into a third-party program, the potential or the possibility is there. So we'll kick us off in the schedule tab, and we'll make sure it's English because this is the English version of this webinar. Sorry about that. My last meeting was a French one. So starting us off again once in English. When you're looking for the export options or the import options, always keep your eyes open in our different tabs for these little arrows. So pointing down, pointing up, we'll have your different options. So export first. In the schedule tab, a lot of data lives here. A lot of stuff can be pulled out. So let's go through every section. Of course, the first part is to define the period you want to evaluate. So if you're just trying to pull out from last month or whatever the case may be, you can customize that really Nothing to it too much there. It's really just to define the period. Afterwards, what we refer to as settings is the different teams, positions, and locations that you'd be using in your software. So however you've customized your work environment, pull it out accordingly. What's really neat here is what you're seeing already, that my team was selected without me having to select this drop-down menu. The way that works is because I have active filters back here. So whoever's already using Evolia, or if ever we have newcomers here that aren't on the platform yet, our structure relies on 3 elements here. So the teams, positions, and locations. When you have a very big team or a very big company, you might have multiple teams. You might not want to be pulling these reports on everyone at the same time. So use these filters wisely, or just select the drop downs accordingly. Very straightforward. We'll pull it on my sales team today, and then we'll leave it at that. Locations, and then afterwards, what type of shift. So this type here is really speaking to the type of shift that we're wanting, that we want to pull out of this report. What we mean by that, for those power users of Evolia, you guys should already know. For some that might be new to our platform, what we're referring to is really, do we want to pull out the assigned shifts compared to the open shifts? Do we want to, take out everything that was approved, everything that's been auto assigned? Because we do have a really neat auto assign feature that'll take care of your schedule creation for you. So you can take all these kind of data points out, referring to the different types, open shifts, or maybe even, the open shifts that were approved or need to be approved. A lot of different complexity there. Pull the different shift types depending on your need. And then of course, how you want this to show up. So if you want it to be all the shifts in that given period, you want it by employee, by location could be useful if you're managing different kind of retail stores or different locations, of course. Position, and a really big one that we get often is absenteeism. So getting a nice summary during a period, a week, a month on our absenteeism is always useful. And then of course, as you see, replacements goes on, but more interesting, or maybe not more interesting, it's all interesting stuff, but we have custom reports as well. So we'll let you build your own reports, select your own data points from different kind of fields, I guess you could call them. So from either the employee profile, the time entry itself, or the punch in, punch out validity, and then you'll create your own custom profile or custom report that way, which we'll dive into in just a moment. Just to give you the example of all the shifts, because this will give you a general example of the different fields that could show up in other kind of more custom reports. We'll pull that, and then we'll change it. Once again, I'll pull it in Excel because it'll be a bit better than the comma separated values for visual sake. But however you want to work, or if the import on the other end needs to be in CSV, then we recommend staying in CSV. Last little mention before I download, because we will mention it shortly, might as well go over it while we're in the screen, is this neat feature down here. So send this report recurrently by email. Of course, set whatever email you want it to send to, and then how you want it to act. So repeat only once every week on Wednesday, every week on Friday. Having your absenteeism report sent to you automatically every Friday afternoon could be a pretty neat thing. So a really cool option that we offer in the product itself, already built in. To show you now what we're all here for is what this report would look like. So let's pull this out. Do excuse my cheap version of Microsoft Office. What we've got here, or Excel, I should say, not Office. Just don't want to pay for this suite. But what we've got here, just to show you a bit of a breakdown, is the different fields, the different data points we could pull out. Let me just make this a bit more visually pleasing for all of you. Of course, bear in mind that this is a demonstration account that I'm pulling out of, so all these stats aren't the best. Most of my employees don't punch in, but what you're seeing here is basically anything that would be tied to that shift. So who gets it, first name, last name, their employee numbers, the start date, the date, of course, start date, the date, the start time, end time, sorry about that. And then of course, total working hours, their hourly rates, the total cost of this shift, and then of course, all the associations. Once again, those that have been on our platform know for sure that to create a shift, you need to set team, position, and location. So this is what you're getting out of here. All the different criteria that were assigned to a shift or associated to a shift. And then that status, right? If it's an open shift, assigned shift, as we can saw, we can filter different reports to filter these out if we want to have a bit of a separation. And then different kind of fields here. The internal note on the shift can be pulled as well. So note for the employee, note for the supervisors, managers, and administrators. And then of course, what happened here, who assigned it, when was it assigned. COVID-19 is a bit of a personalized field that we can use to create different kind of data entry points, which was useful, of course, during that pandemic period. And then afterwards, what you're seeing here is just those answers. So we made like a survey. So every time they punched in, I'm sure most of you remember, we had to answer if we had been in contact, if we had traveled, and so on. So this is also something, if you need any kind of survey like this, I implore you to contact whoever CSM has been assigned to you, or contact our support. We can help you with creating some of this stuff. But that's basically the gist of that all shifts type. We're gonna get all these different data entry points. Not that that scroll allowed you to read much, but what you're getting out of it is literally anything that could be tied to a shift. Just to show you, because I'm not going to start pulling out every single one of these, I invite you afterwards, now that you know where to go and play around what could be useful for your use case, and then set up, recurrent emails maybe, so you don't have to play around with it again. But I really want to put a focus on the custom reports, which is something that's really neat, not offered in every platform. What you can see here, of course, give it a name, and then you can pull data points from the shift itself. So just like we saw, all these fields are basically what popped up in our all shifts report. So you can pull anything based on the shift itself, based on the employee profile, and then of course the time clock and its validity. So if it's clocked in paid, clocked in out, if it was clocked in invalid, or if there was an issue, you can have different kind of reports there. What's really neat here is how this will all interact. So if I go clocked in paid, clocked in out, just to show you the example, the order of my selection, which was first name, last name, employee number, and then clock in, clock out, will be the order of my columns in Excel. Oops, sorry about that. So that's how that works. Make your custom fields, customize a bit how they'll show up, save it because you won't want to do this more than once. You could always edit, of course, if ever there's a need for that. And then afterwards, once you're ready to pull this report, as I said, simply download or maybe send it to yourself recurrently or to whatever team member should be getting this. So that's what we've got in scheduling. And once again, I invite you to go and play around with all these different reports now that you know exactly where to find them, exactly how they work, especially with the filters. But you'll get a lot of detail here based on what you've been scheduling and who's been doing what in terms of time entries. Show you a quick glance at the import feature. Depends on the need here and the different kind of accounts we have set up. We have different configurations with third party, maybe not third party, but other providers such as Amelia Smart Rec. As you can see here, we can import from Logitech depending on the integration we offer. But what happens here is that we can have shifts come in from a different party, and it's all gonna be based on those different data entry points, right? So of course, they'll push in fields that'll feed the team, the position, and the location in Evolia, which will create a shift. And then what we can also do is have those shifts come in assigned. So on the other end, on the other platform, if the activity, I'm thinking, in different kind of booking softwares such as Amelia Smart Rec, if they have an activity assigned to an instructor and that instructor is also in Evolia, the shift will come in assigned to that instructor. Or of course, it can come in unassigned, and then we can take care of managing how it will go, how it'll get assigned if there's different kind of union rules or different kind of business rules to be respected. Evolia is top notch for that. So that's what we've got there for import. The other option, I spoke about it again a lot just to mention it, that was very much just importing from third parties or Logitech. I mentioned Amelia Smart Rec, which is an activity-based software that helps with bookings. You can see here importing assigned versus unassigned activities. This is really neat for those kind of recreational centers that are taking class bookings and would like to communicate these schedules afterwards to instructors. So import options always available. But of course, we've made the schedule creation in Evolia so intuitive that I highly recommend creating your schedules directly in the platform. Next, we've got the employee tab. So employee tab, it's got quite a few reports here. Once again, arrow pointing down, arrow pointing up will be our trigger warnings for reports. What we see here are the different kind of league reports. So a quick little zoom in will show you an example. Very, very straightforward. If you want reports on your employees, what you can do is just a straight up employee list or pull the raw data and you'll have all data points from their profile. So once again, you get to change the format, Excel to CSV, download that one, and let's go pop in and take a look at that. And then of course here, what you're getting, a raw data list of all your employees. So their statuses, their employee codes, first name, last name, of course, their emails or phone numbers, depending on how you've decided to reach out to them, PIN numbers. So very useful if ever you needed to make a mass update on their pins. You could always export and then import afterwards. So there's different kind of functionalities. Instead of having to go into individual profiles and updating individual fields, you can have a mass setting where you'll just import based on this list here. And we'll show you that template in a few moments. But then afterwards, what you're going to see here, this is actually very important to explain. It's a bit of a different terminology compared to what we might be used to. On the back end here, you'll see teams, skills, and location. Skills is our funny way of writing positions. So obviously don't change the title because our system won't understand, but skills is positions for Evolia. So this is exactly what you're seeing here, sales reps, assistant manager, and the rest stays the same, teams and locations. So just a heads up on the skills, but if ever you needed to update those, there's an easier way of doing that that I will be showing you directly in the app. And of course, if we keep going down the line, you'll see all other details such as their hiring dates, if they've adjusted this or if your company uses these preferences, you'll see their max hours per week. Of course, hourly wage is something we see often. And then if the rest here being other information depending on how you're using employee profiles. Keep in mind that Evolia is not trying to be an HR system. We're very much focused on recruiting new candidates to join the team and then scheduling those employees, validating their time entries via our multiple time and entry options and our timesheets. So what you're seeing here, it's not a lot of HR fields such as personal information. You're going to see a lot of basic info for contact information and stuff we need to create schedules, basically. Long story, just to say that we won't have any like social insurance numbers or stuff like that. Custom fields here, once again, it's another notice as we saw a bit in the custom fields in the schedule creation. We can have custom fields in our employee tabs as well that you can go and create. So we'll show you that in just a moment when we pop in how to do that. So what you're seeing here, as you can see, sorry about that, is really all the fields you can possibly export, and this is literally everything you'd find in an employee profile. We'll discard that. We'll show you that quick mention because that might not be something that everyone knows about. Our custom fields will be down here. This is another thing that we use. Once again, it was popular in those COVID times when we needed to add different kind of data points. This is really to the discretion of the user. You can add your own fields, name it however you want, and then give it the value that's needed. So it's very, very customizable. It's very open to interpretation here, but you can pull this data as well, as we saw. To run down the list here, we can keep going with our leave bank reports. This one's a very straight up report. You can have raw data aggregated by employees as well. I'm a big fan of raw data. So we'll go into Excel once again for the visual ease of it instead of those CSV files. And what you're seeing here is raw data on the leave banks. So of course, employee number or code, however you want to call it, and then the types of banks and their quantities. A little different this one compared to their import. We'll see it once again. I'll make sure to pass by the import options in the employee fields, but the import will give you like an extra field where it'll be remove and add so that you could obviously update their banks. But this one's a very straightforward report just to give you a bit of an update or an overview on your employees' leave banks and their values. This one here, very interesting as well. If you want to have an update or a summary on the different skills, we should call them positions since we're in the product here, but different kind of associations that you'll find in the employee profile. So if you're pulling a position list by employee, what you're going to get is literally all your employees and then the different positions that are associated in their accounts. Another thing that can be used to import and add positions in a very quick way. As you're seeing, the standard employee number, first name, last name, and then of course, their positions. If there are any abbreviations, if you're using codes for the other integrations such as payroll providers or HR providers, you'll have the positions codes. And then what we've got going on under the hood in your employee profiles, as what positions. If you're using the score feature, you can have scores pulled as well and updated in this mass setting. And then you're seeing the different kind of data here being their hourly rate, sorry, and their experience being how many hours they've got in that position. And of course, initial experience, how many hours they had when they were hired. So very straightforward, a lot of good data there. And we'll move to the next. And then last but not least, in the export option for employees, we'll have employee schedule preference and as a report. So this is going to be a field I'll show you what data it's pulling. It's basically their availability preferences. So if I download this, I'll change it to Excel again. A lot of times the other end needs to be imported in CSV, so you might need to convert. I strongly recommend not messing with the conversion and just working in CSV if the other provider needs to be imported in CSV to not have a bunch of error fields, but I'll let you Excel whiz kids get at that. What you're seeing here in this last report will be their schedule preferences as mentioned. So you'll see once again the standard name, employee code, and then how it works is that they can set start and end dates to their availabilities. We'll go over that feature in a bit more visual, but you'll see that data there, and then minimum weekly hours, maximum weekly hours, and so on and so forth. We're about to go see all these fields, so you'll see a bit more clearly. What you're seeing here is really everything that you'll be pulling in the availability section of the profile. So max days, max hours, max days per week, max days per weekend, so on and so forth. And then of course, if ever your company has quite the complex structure and your employees work for more than one location, more than one team or position, what you can have here and what you're seeing is that we can have preferred teams and locations. And this can be very useful to act like as their initial position or location or team, right? So it's something that we can use and we can have our system be configured in a way where it'll prioritize maybe as the first level of or the first phase for the invitations, they'll prioritize just the ones with the initial or the preferred team. That way you're inviting the initial people that you should. And if ever you can't find that employee to take that shift, you'll be able to open up the invitation phase and invite people that might not have the initial or preferred location, team, or position. So we'll X that. I think once again, the view of this will show you exactly what I'm talking about. And I don't know why it's not letting me X out now. All right, well, this guy gets to stay open. Interesting. So to circle back on those last two things we mentioned there, so the preferences, and if I just give me a quick little refresh here. Yeah, so preferences of the schedule, the one we literally just saw, it's talking about this little section here, the availability section in our employees profile. This is something that can be, a little bit more blocked in terms of access. As you can see, whatever we have available now or active now is that we have a manager's approval for any changes. We could also have like date limits. So update your availabilities by the end of this month. I'm about to do month of July, so I don't want you to be interrupting my process. Anything after the month of July, they literally can't update. So what you can see here, the three different options, and this is exactly what we pulled out. This is basically where the data came from. So the start and end date of this availability that we're updating, and then if I was available all day or a different time frame during that day, and then if there's a preferred day, we can even add. So it's very, very complex, complete, I should say, as a feature to then give a lot more information to the manager when he's assigning or creating schedules. This is a really neat one. Little mention since we're already in here that you can always activate this as an employee if ever you would like to know that there's a shift that's available even though you're not supposed to be. You can have that invitation, so it'll ignore your availability. And then of course the other data entry points that we saw were this little section here, so the max and minimum hours per week per different pay periods, and then weekends and weekdays, and then the famous preferred locations. Perfect. I just saw a question pop up here for the sharing of the recorded webinar. Yeah, it'll be accessible. I don't know if they share it directly to the participants, but we'll either make sure to send it to the participants or it'll be on the webinar website. So we'll make sure to have that accessible. So we'll come out of this. And then last thing I wanted to mention, because we talked about export and import. So like before we go into that import section, I really like to mention this. We've made this such an easy software to use. You can add and update, add and remove basically positions, locations, teams directly from the interface. So you don't have to play with the reports. So you can literally just select a number of employees or all your employees as I just did, and then choose to add a team, add a position, add a location, or vice versa, remove. So the same screen, you just need to select. And then same thing goes for their time in their leave banks. So add the amount of employees that need to be updated, add, remove, and then choose what bank and how much you're adding. It's very straightforward. It's going to cause you a lot less headaches, of course, if you're doing a handful of updates. We do agree, I'm sure we do agree that, of course, if you have 50 or so employees to update, of course, the import will be the best option. And then we'll have those options right over here. So just keep that in mind, because these can be very, very useful to add and remove different kind of values in your employee profiles. But as we are on that topic, what you can see here are the different import options. So import employees, import leave banks, and the skills and positions like we just mentioned. The one we use when we kick off an account will be that import employees. Even if you have a batch of employees after the implementation process, you can do this same procedure. We give you that template file that you can download and then follow along. If I'm not mistaken, this one will come in as a CSV value, CSV, a comma separated value. You can always convert it and then have your Excel sheet. But once again, watch out when you're doing this, because it can kind of cause you issues with the different fields. As you're seeing, these are all referring to the entry points that we'll see in Evolia: first name, last name, their status, full-time, part-time, their code. And then as we've been talking about, team, skills, location. So you're basically creating their profiles with the import sheet. So you follow along, you get this saved, and then you drag it into the attached file. So very, very straightforward. Of course, now mine's gonna be empty, but just to show you the next step, basically, what's gonna happen is it's gonna ask you or show you all the different fields. Of course, now they're all blank because I didn't fill anything in, but it's showing you that there will be problems here. This team doesn't make any sense because we don't have a team called all teams. So this is basically how it works, showing you a bit of how the fields will match. And then of course, a very, very important feature here. We've been talking a lot about updating banks, updating employee profiles. Toggling this feature will give you access to update based on their employee code or the email. So it becomes very easy to just mass update a whole employee list when it comes to, time banks or their skills and positions, their positions and locations. So that's the import there. And then of course, every import option will give you that template. So whether it's the leave bank, whether it's the employees, whether it's the skills and positions, I keep saying skills and positions, my bad. Whether it's the positions, teams, and locations, you'll have it here as well. Just keep in mind, skills in the report equals positions in Evolia. So that's the spiel or the gist of employee's profile. Next tab will be the timesheets. Very important data comes through here. So what we've got is basically all kind of time entries, all different kind of time off that has been approved. You'll see in your timesheets, of course, these will need to be approved before we send it off, but you can always pull reports. So the different options in this tab will be, as you can see, a straight up timesheet report. So whatever you're seeing in the profile, you'll have it by employee and their time entries, a summary, so a bit more of a broken down and a bit easier to read. And then this one's very, very useful, especially if we're not integrated with the payroll provider that you're using. You can have your earning codes in the back end. So by team, by position, by location, you could enter your codes. You could have your codes by, matching with your overtime rules, your premium rules. And so that you can group them up and have a very clean report by employee, the hours worked, by earning code. So it's very clean, very easy to understand. Give you a bit of a more general example to show you the data points for the timesheets, but to proceed the line, we could also pull out expenses and maybe even just to see the night shifts. So different kind of options there. The first one you're seeing here is based on my demonstration account because we've integrated our demo account with Employeur. So when you have that offer, it's either you're integrated with an API, so it's an automatic update, you can just press a button and then it'll send the respective fields in the respective data in the respective fields in Employeur. Or sometimes people will need to have that export option, so they'll have that preset template of Employeur so they can easily export and import without having to manipulate the CSV or the Excel file outside of Evolia. So we can have a preset there, but usually when we face clients with these kinds of integrations through the API, don't break your head with that. Our integrations button is right here. It'll ask you to confirm the pay period. Of course, it'll repeat who you're integrated with, where we're setting this to. This pay period is defined in the settings, so you're really just toggling it on, and then you export. That's 3 clicks once everything's validated to push it into the other system. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about reporting from Evolia. So let's pull this timesheet and see what's going on in there. And pay period, not the biggest deal. We'll leave it at that. Of course, I'm sure you've noticed, or maybe you haven't, but you can always send, it'll always give you that option. We saw it in the custom reports and the employee profile and the scheduling, but you could always send directly to an email. So if you're dealing with an accounting firm and you just want to send it straight to your rep, you can send it straight to that person instead of having them on Evolia, hence being another user on your profile. What you're seeing here, start us off with the standard first name, last name, employee number, emails, of course, and then as we saw, quite similar to the shift report, you'll have the date, the start time, and then if their clock-ins are valid, you'll see it, clock in paid, clock in, the different notes. So if ever they were late, they would have a note here like, hey, my cat was sick. You'll be able to see that. And then so on and so forth, same thing in reverse, end time, clock in, clock out. So clock out paid will be what was what will be approved, what you planned. If ever they clocked out outside of that planned window, you'll see a nice comparison there. You'll also see this visually represented. You'll also see this visually represented in the product itself, in the platform. So you might not need to break your head and pull reports to see it, but you can pull it if ever there is a need there. So just to finish off here, the different kind of reports, different kind of fields we're seeing, right? Hourly rate, the paid amount for this shift, my very, very work ethic oriented employees here that don't punch in. As you can see, demonstration account. I hope that you have a lot better stats on your end, but you'll see that you're pulling everything that could exist in Evolia when it comes to that shift, or that time entry, I should say, at this point. Locations, sublocations, so on and so forth. This, of course, will be the data point that's going to feed our absenteeism report, right? So absent, so on, and then the different kinds of shift if you had open shifts, assigned shifts. So it's quite similar actually to the shift template, the shift schedule report, but this will have a bit more data when it comes to the validity of the time entry being clocked in, paid, clocked in, out. And of course, all these data points are the similar data points you'll find in the different export options. So depending on what you're trying to see here, maybe one that'll be much different than what we've just been viewing will be expenses. So just to show you an example there, this employees can submit expenses or managers could add expenses to timesheets. It really depends on your use case. But as you can see, very, very straightforward. You'll see the cost of the expense, the currency, and then of course the type being the different default types we offer, traveling, whatever the case could be. I'll show you that field in just a few minutes. So very detailed, quite basic as a report. It's really just to pull you this very simple information. So if I go on Mark's account here, on vacation, so might not make that much sense. We'll go for another shift. But basically here, I could add an expense. This can be the manager that does it. This could be the employee that does it, and then we'll need an approval. But the different types of expenses we'll have will be right here. Traveling, $100 for whatever, 50 kilometers or whatever the case may be, whatever rate you offer. You could even have the employees not fill out the amount and just write, the kilometers, let's just say, and write, 0. So that way the manager can validate this, say that, we're giving 50 cents a kilometer, and then we'll give the amount. So it could be different kind of procedures or control points on the expenses. Just wanted to show you that, because if we're talking about the report and we don't know where it's coming from, then we're not helping anybody. So that's what we've got there for the timesheets. Just to show you that you can also import your expenses. So if ever you were managing expenses on a different app, and then you could pull that, what you're seeing here, of course, we'll give you the template, and you just have to feed the information based on our field names, so that way you won't be causing any confusion once you import. And then, of course, always recommend converting into your Excel format instead of the comma separated value. But once again, keep in mind that ours will be an import on CSV, so you might have to reconvert it to CSV before importing, or simply work on your CSV. Basically, this is what you're seeing here. When it comes to expenses, you'll see the exact same fields you just saw: the employee, of course, the type of expense, the date, the amount, and if there was a description. Very, very straightforward. And that kind of rounds us up for the timesheets. Beautiful. Of course, feel free to explore afterwards, just to go and look. If you have night shifts, go and pull your night shifts report. Sadly, mine would be very empty. My retail division here doesn't have any night shifts, so it's not much use for me there. So now, hopefully Jules is still around. We're at the request tab. So what we're going to go through are the different options here. Once again, I mentioned it earlier, but just keep in mind your filters stay active, right? So it's always going to pull what you're filtering. So whatever you got active as filters, if you want to, get a bit more data, maybe expand your filters a bit and get the whole team instead of just one team, one division, or one position. That being said, the export option in the report is very straightforward. You only have one option. It's going to be an export on all the leave types. And then, of course, their status. So if I open this, I think I changed it in Excel. Yeah, I did. Awesome. I'm going to start saying this in my sleep, but we're starting with first name, last name, then the from and to dates for their time off request, the type of time off request. They should be adding reasons, but we do things very quickly sometimes, so we haven't been adding reasons on our requests for the demos. And then afterward, the unit. So this is actually a really good mention. Evolia is a pretty cool tool because we can convert the units of measurements, thinking of things like Bamboo HR that sends information in hours, or different banks that could be sending it in dollars or days even. As you can see here, we don't have a day bank for some reason, but we can change however it comes in to show up for the employees, or to be represented for the employees in days, hours, or dollars. So makes it a lot easier. And also you can have access to this as an employee if your manager gives you access to it. So you're getting away from the whole, hey, do I have time off in this bank? Or how do I have enough, days in this category? Can I do it? Now you're really just showing up, filling out the request. You'll see how many days you have left. If ever your manager does not approve based on, the schedule that they're managing, you'll be refused, and then you might have a comment with the explanation, or you'll just clearly get approved. So very, very neat tool there. And then, of course, being able to change that value and make it a bit more easy to read for the employees increases that user experience there. Bank that is also a good mention. So we can also create like time off overtime rules that will automatically bank. So it'll let you know that this 3 hours of overtime came from what day. So very important there. So that's your leave request report and all the data that would pull from it. Of course, you can manage all accordingly here. Was there anything else? I think I just want to make sure I'm not missing a question. Is there ever a way to change the date field so we could enter the dates manually rather than having to scroll down through the calendar? I'm not sure I follow your question there, Jules. Would you mean in the calendar tab? And if you mean in the calendar tab, maybe what you haven't found yet is that you can make your calendar just a time off calendar. So that might help out, but you can show only leave requests here, so that you'll only see leave requests. You won't see any other noise, basically. So it'll make finding time off a lot easier. But if you mean in the reports changing the dates, what the report is pulling is the date that the employee requested the time off. So yeah, I'm seeing a bit of a counterintuitive act there. Yeah, we'll get to that, Ayatollah. For the payroll, we'll go back to that. Yeah, so schedule and review, perfect. Perfect. We'll leave it at that. If anything, always feel free to contact support. We might want to jump on a one-on-one call just to see if there's something we're not picking up on the question there, Jules. But essentially, if you're talking about this date here, I just want to be thorough. That the data entry points that you're seeing here is really what the employee submitted, right? So if you want to change these, you'd essentially be creating their time entries for them. So if you want to change any of these fields, you'd essentially just be making the time entry for the field for the date that you'd want, and then you'd see that date. So maybe I'm creating more confusion, but essentially this will be pulled from the interaction between manager and employee. So this is the date that's going to be accurate on where they're starting and where they're ending their time off. Just want to make sure this question is weirdly filtered. Can I filter by received? Yes, I can. Amazing. Okay. Okay, so make sure not to forget Ayatollah. Okay, I'll try. Not seeing this. Thank you. Perfect. All right, so Ayatollah, just to get back to you, make sure we don't forget that. Where can I find the total hours worked in a pay period so it's easy to export for payroll? Yeah, so I don't know, maybe you missed the timesheet part. Let's get back into the timesheet. But total hours worked in a pay period, what you'll find is, of course, you define your own pay period. Maybe I'll start off there. Let's take a couple steps back. So the pay period is defined by yourself in your settings. I suggest you guys always use this search bar. It's a very easy way of finding what you need. So payroll management, you'll define the frequency, if it's weekly, bi-weekly, bi-monthly, or monthly, how you want your night shifts to show up, so on the start day or on the end day. And then based on this, when you go to export your files in your timesheets, you define, first of all, the type of file you want, the type of report. So if you're looking for total hours worked, I would probably go timesheets, summary, or even summary group by earning code. As I explained, it's going to group the hours worked by employee by earning code, whether it's regular time, whether it's overtime, whether it's a premium. And then afterwards, you simply change your format however you need. What I was getting to was toggle on this switch. So as long as your pay period is defined in your settings, you either pull whatever report you need for the total hours, however you like it, however you rather it, from this screen here and toggle on the pay period. So hopefully that answers Ayatollah's question, showing you a bit of the summary group by earning code here. Of course, this is, once again, a demo account, so these are probably not regular codes, but what you're seeing here are regular hours, and I think 305 is over some sort of overtime or some sort of time off, so on and so forth. But basically, this would be, of course, coded and mapped with your business rules. Awesome. But also, Ayatollah, if ever, it's not a report, but you'll also see, I'm sure you've seen this in your scheduling tab, you'll have your total planned hours, your total overtime hours, workforce costs by day, and then by week here for the employee. Another thing that might be worth mentioning if we're talking about cost of employees, hours distributed, a really neat feature, maybe not everybody knew about this, is our budget tracking. So what we can create with Evolia are budgets that will refer to the workforce cost or the hours. Of course, give it whatever you need, retail budget, whatever the case is. Workforce cost, let's say I don't want to go over 5,000 this week. Give a specific date if needed. And then afterwards, I could assign this budget to a team, a position, location. So that way, if ever a manager is working on this specific team's schedule and they're over budget, they will be prompted to stop or to adjust. And then, of course, they can have alerts as well, which is a really neat feature. If we get to like 80% of our budget, we want to get a bit of notifications going out to our managers. We alert these supervisors, these administrators that, we're getting close to this budget here and make sure we make the proper adjustments. Yeah, absolutely. So to answer that question, no, the invitation report we went over on the first tab, so maybe you weren't in the room yet. Let me just pop that up here, non-scheduled. I want my leave request back. So the open shifts will be found in your scheduling tab here. Once again, your export option will be found there. And then if you want to have to pull on different shift types, as I explained earlier, this first type is referring to the shift types. As you can see here, shift types. So if you want anything related to an assigned shift versus an open shift, or as you can see, assigned open shifts, you'll want to come looking in here and then picking out what you need as data. So I think your question was receive invitations for open shifts. So exactly what you'd want to see here maybe is either the assigned open shifts, or I even just thought about something else, if I do this, give you an example, because I'm not sure this one will give you all the details that this, we have a different report that you can find in our open shifts that I'll show you in just a second. So it's a good question. So of course here you'll see, if once again, bear with me, demonstration account, so we don't really assign. We tend to manually assign to create a fake schedule, but you'll see all the details here based on that schedule or on that period, on those open shifts, who they were assigned to. Of course, all the shift details I won't open, but basically what we want to get to is assigned by and assigned to. So at least this one will give you this, but we also have a cool little feature that I'll show you in just a second. So that's what we're getting there. Of course, you're going to get the employee name, first name as a standard. We've been seeing this every other time. But a cool one that you just made me think of with that question is directly on an open shift. This can be something used a lot of times when people are, a little skeptical. Maybe they're saying that they weren't invited, or they're not getting the notifications, or they're never getting shifts. They don't really want to understand. They want to understand and make sure that they're getting invited. You can always download invitation reports directly from the open shift to show any employee that might be, arguing on the state of fairness of the shift distribution, to show, hey, we sent these invitations. You saw this invitation at this time. You saw it on the app versus the web interface, or on SMS, if ever you guys have active SMS notifications, and then answers, timestamps, and then if they got it or not. So this one here would probably be the fastest one pertaining to a specific need, as in, like, if you need to know exactly this shift, but if you want to have like a full period, it would be from that calendar report. So hopefully that answers that question for the received invitations for open shifts. And of course, very nice view here. You'll see all the details possible. So when they were invited, if they showed their hand, and when. And of course, their hiring date, so you can make all of the right decisions. But we can maybe create another webinar to go over invitation rules and our different kind of assignation, assignation, I think is what they call it, assignment rules, basically. So we could automate who gets invited, and then from the people that are interested, who's going to get the shift. But at 11:48, I'll spare you that one for a different webinar. Quite a detailed explanation. So I'll leave the floor open for a couple questions, because we did go through the reporting. To let you guys stimulate some questions, what I might do here is show you a bit of our recruiting too, which is really neat, because guess what? We've got reports in here as well. So this here, if you didn't know, we also have opened or created a full platform for recruiting that can be linked to your employee scheduling, or can be completely standalone from the scheduling itself. But essentially what you're seeing here is our kind of ATS that we've built. So all these candidates that apply on the different jobs that you can post on our external map, which I'll show you in just a moment so you get a bit of a better idea, will come reside in your, I guess you can call it an ATS, so your Evolia ATS here. So what you're seeing here are different candidates that I've already unlocked compared to someone that I haven't unlocked. The way the system works is that we need to pay for candidates to unlock them. So how the whole spin or the whole pitch is really, instead of paying for a block of CVs or a whole bundle of CVs that you might not even use, or you might use 5 or 6 of them, you're really paying for whoever you find is the most interesting and the one that will fit your need the best. My account isn't properly set up to show you the whole details of this, because I can't publish real jobs, but we can have pre-screening questions as well. So as candidates come in and they're locked, you can even see how qualified they are before unlocking them, which is a really neat feature. And it's got a lot of value to it, of course, because you'll save yourself from unlocking candidates that might not be qualified. So as you can see here, I've already unlocked this person, but you would see some basic information, maybe not the full phone number, the full email you wouldn't see for sure. You would definitely see how far they are from your posting, and you would see their answers to those pre-screening questions. And of course, as I click on that person, you'll see that they've given us a bit more detail by attaching their CV, which you won't have access to until you unlock. But if they had answered pre-selection questions, you'll see all those before unlocking. So that whole explanation on what this is was really just to show you that once you've unlocked your candidates, you can export in this page and export the whole list of candidates that have been unlocked. Essentially how it's going to come out is that it'll export all of them. The reason why I said unlocked is that obviously if they're locked, they're going to come out looking like this, instead of someone that's unlocked and we have full detail. A really neat feature here because the whole purpose of this is having the eventuality of setting this data into a provide ATS or a different kind of tracking system for candidates that you guys are already using. So that way you won't be forced to use our Evolia ATS. You can use our recruiting module, which we call the Evolia job portal. You can funnel your candidates from Evolia then to your existing ATS, so you're not causing a bunch more issues for yourself. So that's where that report will come in handy. For the time being, it's an export import into current ATSs if you can manipulate it in the right fields and so on. But in the eventuality that we will be increasing this functionality, we'll have full on automatic APIs and integrations where you can export and import. When looking at only leave requests on the schedule view, is there a way to export that view? The best way to export that view, and it might not be a report, would be printing. So if you print the view, you're going to print exactly what you're seeing. So if you want to just see that list of just the time off requests, you filter out just the time off requests. You'll only have the time off requests and you print that screen. You'll have all the time off requests for the period or the filters you're looking at. And then if you want to report, you'll have, I'm going to bring you back to the request tab. That's going to be the best way. Yeah, no problem. Give you guys a couple more minutes. I'll round it off until like 58, so no problem there. And then if there's no questions, then I'll wish y'all a good day. Keep my eyes on this. Thank you. Looking forward to the yes. We will keep that posted. We'll keep you posted for that. We'll note it down right now. Absence coding webinar, and then we'll get that figured out for you guys. Always good for recommendations on topics. Thanks, Jules. Thanks for your questions and your interaction. Really appreciate it. Perfect. Added to the list. If you're still in here, Ayatollah, we added that to the list, and hopefully we'll be out there shortly with that webinar. Perfect. Well, I was going to leave you until 58, but the question seems to be dying by. Thank you, Ayatollah. Would love a session on how to import manual timesheets. Keep the recommendations coming, guys. Love it. How to import manual timesheets. Import manual timesheets. We are on the reports here though today, so importing the timesheets mean maybe a whole webinar on the workflow of it. Of course, my timesheets, I'd have to set up a nice template because I'm going to create myself a bunch of issues with my field names. But importing a timesheet would be as easy as respecting the fields you're seeing here. So this is the template we'd give you, right, for the same things. I don't know if you're still here, Jules, and if not, don't worry, I added it to the list. So we'll go over it on a different webinar. But essentially, you're just creating a time entry this way. So the employee code, this is the wrong template. What happened there? Oh, well, there you go. That answers that. I was under the impression. Yeah, so importing a timesheet is not a thing that we offer. Yeah. Yeah, we export timesheets. Evolia helps you generate the data in your timesheets, but importing a timesheet would be a little it's counterintuitive. Yeah, but we have several viewers who don't have Evolia access. Interesting. So let's note that down. Okay. They could also add time entries, but if they're not using Evolia, they can't do it. You can always manage those employees, Jules, and have like if they're not on access, you'd have, of course, an employee that would have this yellow triangle. I don't know if I have the right example because all my employees have joined. Maybe even my inactive would be good. And then you just manage their own time entries, right? They'd have this triangle. Of course, you're creating yourself an extra user, so we'd have to bill you on the user amount. But you could have this bunch of employees. You could even create their own team and have their timesheets created by your team since they don't have access. Yeah. So we'll bring it up. We have constant meetings on how we can improve things. That could be something interesting if we have a timesheet from an Excel sheet that we want to import. Yeah. Thanks for that. My pleasure. Thank you. All right, so I'm starting to get a little snacky. I'm gonna close off the webinar and I'll wish you guys all a very good lunch break. Hopefully, if that's the time or if we're in the same time zone, it should be timing up. And if not, a very good day and a great week. So thanks for attending and I wish you all the best. Close this guy.